Hey again, everyone. Glad to those that are back again. Thank you to those listening for the first time. If you hear something you like, go ahead and sub and like it or whatever. If you hate it, sub anyway. Leave your hateful comments below. I don't mind, they don't hurt me. We gotta start separating these between rambles and rants. The rants are usually the ones where I get kind of angry, frustrated. The rambles are more slow paced. Not slow paced, no. It's not a good word for it. They're just kind of like stream of consciousness, just thoughts I've been having about specific little things, and I just kind of ramble. But I don't usually get upset because I'm in an okay mood. Honestly, I'm probably generally like this unless I'm speaking on something that brings up very specified frustrations about life and existence as a whole and all that boring shit. In this case, I want to ramble on about something that some of you may find interesting. Obviously, in my experience, I have ADD and SPDs, schizoid, whatever. Other people have all kinds of different PDs and issues, so I can't speak for you guys, but I would like to hear your perspectives on what I'm about to talk about and how maybe your own PDs, if you possess any, might be similar, or you might find some silver lining regarding them. So I'm going to go into a headspace that I usually don't go into, in which I'm going to look at things in a more positive light. That's not generally my style. Pretty cynical most of the time. But sometimes there's those moments. So most of us are pretty familiar with the issues or problems that come with whatever personality disorders we have to tolerate or endure within ourselves or sometimes those close to us. We know the issues, we know the cons, but are there any pros? Is there anything to be gained from any of this? Any benefit can be gained from having a PD or multiple PDs if you have some comorbid type situation? This is all kind of coming back to something that I was discussing with my psychologist as well as other people about how how a PD can often be a double-edged sword, and part of the issue is trying to find a way to dull the edge that you don't like and sharpen the edge that proves to be useful. Obviously, the side you want to dull is generally the things associated with anger or depression, anxiety, all the emotions that tend to be destructive, self-destructive, or cause you not to be motivated enough to do anything. In which case, that's one of my, sides that I'd like to dull, even though most of everything I do is dull, is the part with the apathy or the indifference. The apathy, the apathetic aspect of being schizoid is something, that you constantly combat or deal with, because some aspects of you do care about certain things, but the apathy always kind of circles in, and sometimes it makes it really difficult to care a lot about certain things, and especially things that other people seem to care about quite a bit. And in my case, it also comes with a certain level of it's like a low-level consistent depression that can sometimes heightened depending on the circumstances, but generally low-level and consistent. Anxiety used to be much, much higher in previous years, no longer the case for myself. Is with the combination of CBD, medication, psychological help of various types. I guess at the moment some psychotherapy, but the anxiety itself CBD was enough for myself to take care of that combined with the medication. The low-level depression is consistent, like I said. That doesn't go anywhere, but that's something kind of part of my personality at this point. It's nothing I can't live with. It's when it kind of kicks up a notch that it could be a problem. But my worst probably enemy as far as trying to function is apathy. Apathy and indifference. That's probably the part that I struggle with the most sometimes. But enough of the detriments. We all are pretty familiar with our personality disorders, like I said, if you possess one, or those of people near you or close to you. But what are the pros? What are the benefits that can come from this? If in fact one can dull the side of the blade that we wish to kind of dull and sharpen the good. What is the good? What is the beneficial? What is the functional? What is the pragmatic at times? What is the efficient, profitable, sometimes even, aspect of your PD? I kind of just shout out some examples off the top of my head of ones that I've heard of from others. So, and examples I've read about. For example, people that suffer with obsessive compulsive disorder. That's, I believe, is a cluster C type situation. I know that some of the people who have overcome some of the detrimental, destructive, negative aspects of their disorder have turned into people that are still remain very efficient, still remain very organized, still remain very composed, when in positions of control. And when they overcome the distress, anxiety, anger that sometimes comes with, such an issue, they tend to do extremely well in certain types of jobs, professions, situations. They tend to be the person that organizes things and enjoys doing so. They find the peace, they can tap into the peace and tranquility that they gain from that control, from that organization, without, the problems that come with when they don't have access to that control, or when things become disorder, there's a certain level of disarray to fix or to, worry about or stress about. That's what I've been told. I've read it too. Also, in the case of someone that is highly anxious or perhaps paranoid, or somebody that might be avoidant, might be, in the same camp, in the sense that their awareness levels are very, very high. So are always constantly aware of their surroundings, their situations, small nuances, small things, all sorts of stuff that might be imperceptible to the average mind, to the neurotypical mind. And again, when they overcome all the distressors and problems that come with that, I have read stories of individuals that have been able to use it. I mean, you can use that kind of heightened sense of awareness for all sorts of things. If you want to work security, if you want to work in a position that requires constant vigilance, I mean, even military in some sense. But my point is, there are people that have learned to hone it, to control it, to use it, to focus it. And similarly, there are stories of individuals that are schizotypical, usually, because with schizophrenia, it becomes a little more complicated. But people that are schizotypical can still be highly functional. They tend to have less of a problem being functional than someone that is schizophrenic. Thus, the difference between being aware and unaware, mostly, of the reality of the predicaments you find yourself in psychologically. Some of those schizotypical people are great artists. They use the hallucinatory, the auditory hallucinations, the sensory hallucinations and things like that, to add to their art, add to the dreamscapes they create, to the feelings that they feel, to the sometimes depersonalization that occurs, or they transform it into something beautiful, something entertaining, something useful to themselves or others. And there's plenty of fields in which creativity is a key factor. They're able to tap into sources of thought unknown to many, unknown to myself, even. So I respect that, and there's something beautiful in what a schizotypical person can create or do when they do what I'm saying is that honing of the blade. Just examples that I've read about or heard of outside my own experience, in which would be schizoid and ADD. As far as my ADD goes, yeah, it's highly detrimental in some respects, losing focus constantly. I don't have the H part, so I don't get extremely hyper or energetic. The schizoid aspect of it kind of counteracts it, but the focus is always getting lost, mixed out with a certain sense of apathy, and then my attention only gravitates toward whatever's particularly stimulating at that point in time, which sometimes is not good, because if I have something to do and something else I find stimulating appears, the distraction immediately occurs. Kind of feels like a moth to a flame, you know. You just can't help yourself. You just will go right to it. But I've significantly worked on that over the years, because that was the first issue that I dealt with first, because, well, that was what I was initially diagnosed as a child. So that was something I had more time to work on more diligently. It's very, very difficult, obviously, because you have to have focus to learn focus, you know. But once it's kind of you learn to compartmentalize your focus and things like that, because of the efforts you had to make because of the ADD. One thing that is interesting about ADD is that when you are hooked on something, once you can latch on to something, you latch on hard, and your focus is very, very tunnel visioned. It can be very, very tunnel vision. As long as you create a space for yourself in which too many distractions are not available. So interestingly enough, in my experience, when no distractions are available, or you create an environment in which distractions are reduced by a significant margin, there's a tendency to almost super focus on things. So that in itself is, I guess, a beneficial aspect of ADD. But you're here to listen to the Schizoid, right? Well, this one is more the one that I've had to mull over more recently, because I've only been diagnosed. I've been diagnosed for less of a period of time with this than I have been with the ADD, because and the the GAD at one point, the generalized anxiety. But in the case of being schizoid, and if there's any other schizoid people listening that can relate or agree or disagree, I'd like you to comment, please. Comment. Helps me out a lot. I was talking with my psychologist, and we were hashing over some of the beneficial aspects of the disorder. One of which was the benefit that comes with the flat affect, or the generally calm or kind of aloof demeanor when in social interactions. Normal circumstances that can be kind of annoying to people, or you already know the issues that it comes with. I've discussed them before, but one of the benefits is that when an emergency occurs, when something really crazy happens, earthquake, car accident, someone gets hurt, something happens, in my experience, I stay calm. My heart barely skips a beat, if at all. I look at the situation, I assess it, I do what I can to fix it. It takes me a little second at first because I kind of look at the situation and gather info in my brain, I guess. I don't immediately jump to action unless it's something that requires it. Um, I kind of like, it feels like I'm like trying to see the level of distress that this is causing or issues or whatever initially before making a move. I don't know how my brain does it or why it does it, but it seems to do that. And it's often confused with a lack of response or care. Like, if somebody falls and, I see that they're fine, I'll slowly approach. But, that could be confused with, you don't care or whatever. But I can tell based on how they fell, what they hit, how they're responding, that it's either a bad fall or it's something that's negligible almost. I have been in situations where emergencies have occurred, and even as a child, here's a story time. When I was a kid, there was earthquake. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the big Ridgemont or just a big LA earthquake of like the 90s. Big one. Freeways crumbled, all kinds of stuff. I was at LAX with the family, and this thing hit. It was the middle of the night. Probably like I think it was like 2 or 3 a.m. or something. And everyone started panicking, freaking out. All the adults, because it was a big one. And we were pretty close to the epicenter, and everyone was freaking out, screaming, didn't know what to do, panicking. I remained entirely calm. I have this vivid memory as a kid, just being kind of like, wow, look, it's an earthquake. Whoa, it's a big one. That's interesting. That's all I remember going through my head. I developed zero fear of earthquakes. If anything, it decreased after this experience, any kind of fear or discomfort that they cause most people. And I vividly remember people saying, let's go outside, run outside, run out. My father telling everyone, we should go outside, it's dangerous in here, and all this stuff, right? And everyone started kind of charging for the door. And I remember following, and I'm just a kid, right? So I'm going to, and we go outside, and there's like a freeway collapse and all this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, like, why is everyone freaking out? Like, what's the big deal? No one's hurt. Nothing's collapsed on top of us. It's fine. It stopped. There's probably going to be some aftershocks that are probably going to be. They were pretty strong after that, but nothing too crazy. And in my head, I was thinking, oh, we're in an airport. I'm sure this building is modern and designed to withstand an earthquake, which it was. And that's the thing I announced when we went outside, and there was all these cars crash and all this chaos, and people, screaming for this and that. And I said, why are we outside? We should go inside. It's safer inside. The building is basically designed, it's a modern building that's designed to withstand things like this. It's an airport. And, it took a few tries to get anyone to listen, including my father. And eventually, I think when my father repeated what I said, and a few others, obviously they're not going to listen to a kid. They then went inside. And that kind of behavior, when something like that occurs, has been pretty consistent in my life. Something crazy happens, I remain generally calm. I move faster if I need to. If my heart may beat faster because the slightly heightened sense of urgency occurring, or the sense of urgency, but it's not like a panic, which is really weird because I know what panic attacks are like. And my panic attacks that I've ever had have never been because of a external situation. It was always an internal issue. It was always a psychological issue. It was not an external reason or logically external reason for a attack of anxiety. So yes, an event such as that wouldn't cause me any anxiety, and it still remains like that for me to this day. And I had discussed this with my psychologist about some, because we were kind of going over some of my childhood. Obviously, that's what you do with psychologists. And she mentioned the possible benefits that come with that. And I never thought of it really like that. Because I didn't think like, oh, well, maybe I should have become something where I deal with emergencies. that doesn't interest me, so I wouldn't. But if, say, I wanted to find a job that required dealing with high urgency situations, or some kind of RN or something, or some kind of medical degree, or something that requires that sort of thing, emergency, um, getting quick on your feet stuff, I could probably do it pretty good, just because I wouldn't panic. But my bedside manner would probably be really garbage because people in those types of situations probably want hugs and secure feelings and things like that. That part I'd probably suck at pretty badly. I have memories of people or something happening to someone or something really bad, and then just going up to a manager or somebody in a store that I worked at and just saying, "Oh, hey, by the way, this just happened," or "Oh, hey, by the way, I almost was attacked," or "Oh, this melted, or this didn't work, or this broke," and they fly into a panic, and then I'm confused because I'm like, well, it already happened, so why are you getting upset about something that happened that you couldn't stop because it happened? And it's a stranger, or it's just somebody you kind of work with, or an acquaintance, and they're still alive, they're just slightly damaged, and they will recover. Like I never understood the panic or the worry that happens in most people, especially when the situation, I feel, doesn't warrant it. A lot of the times when I read about the types of jobs or things that schizoid individuals go into, it always mentions they go into a field in which they like to be a solitary person, work by themselves. Again, a benefit. I mean, somebody has to do some of those jobs, right? Those jobs in which you interact with little to no one. Those jobs in which you're in isolation for extended periods of time and have absolutely no problem with it. Those are the type of positions that a schizoid would not only benefit from, for themselves, but it technically would be kind of beneficial to society, because they could take on jobs that other people perhaps would not, due to that same isolation. Maybe those are the guys that like to work in those middle of nowhere, scientific, reclusive sort of bases and locations and research centers where they're like with maybe one or two other people, and that's about it at best, or in the best case scenario by themselves. Yeah, maybe there's a place in the world for people like that. There's a reason, not some like existential or philosophical reason for it, but I'm saying there's something you can do. um, Another instance is that calm demeanor, that flat affect. It can be useful in the right type of situations. You could be a particularly good moderator for discussion, because that's another thing people always get confused, I feel. At least in my experiences, I love discussion. I love having conversations about things and people and concepts and ideas and politics, philosophy, science, whatever subject. I like discussions about things and concepts, even characters, because they're more of like an abstract concept, because the characters symbolize something. I just don't like talking about me and feelings and the usual stuff that intimacy kind of stuff that just doesn't make sense to me and I don't relate to. But discussion itself, if we can keep it on the subject, oh yeah, that's great. It's really fun, and I get laughs and I enjoy it. But that's not usually what happens in everyday life, so that's what makes it difficult. But yeah, could I moderate a discussion between two individuals that are in opposition of each other without inserting myself in some biased way? Yeah, I could definitely do that, because I don't want to insert myself in some biased way. I just want to hear out what the hell's being talked about. I'm interested in what they have to they fucking have to say, not anything else. Not trying to push some agenda of my own. So I mean, maybe that's another thing that's beneficial when it comes to schizoids. Maybe that slight indifference, or if you hone your indifference to only being indifferent to emotional arguments or emotional outbursts, but still still finding a sense of purpose in the content itself, and either discussing or moderating that content. there you go. That one just kind of popped into my head. I didn't really think about it like that, but it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to think about some of the ways in which your, disorder, as they like to call it, can be, created into something useful, something beneficial to you and the people you love or care for. If you love and care for anyone, which you're not required to. I'm not saying. I know we might have some antisocials in our audience here, or my audience, or whatever you want to call it. So if you don't have people, that's fine. You don't need people. But my point is, you can use that to benefit yourself in a reciprocal way for others, because obviously, if you can create situations in which you benefit, but others benefit as well as a side effect, the possibility of you being deterred from that continuing that action is decreased significantly. So then you get less opposition and you can continue benefiting from that situation. Yeah, that's about it. If you have comments, put them down. If you liked what you heard, subscribe, like, whatever. It just helps the channel grow. I kind of want it to grow because I just like hearing what other people have to say about their own experiences, because it kind of helps me understand other people and their situations on a almost like just a data collecting scale. Because even though I may lack a certain level of empathy, I might still be able to understand and reason it and like go through the reasoning in my head, and that benefits me too. That benefits me significantly. Tell your stories. If you have a story that's similar, in which you noticed that your situation um, has some beneficial aspects, write it down. Put it in there. I want to hear about it. I know you may be suffering still with a lot of the hardships that come with disorder, but still, tell me some of the silver linings, if there are any. If you don't feel there are any, tell me why not. I'm curious to hear that as well. Not here to judge. I'm just here to listen. About the only thing I ever judge others on is anything in which they want to inhibit, destroy, or damage in some way the individual liberties of every sentient being. Something like that, then I may judge you, because that's about the only thing I think is worthwhile. But outside of that, I don't really care. You can tell me whatever. I just want to hear your stories. Oh, and honestly, I'm still trying to figure out what this channel is really going to be about in some kind of long-term way. So if you have ideas, throw them out there. Tell me what you think. All right. Thanks a lot.